Mac, you look happy as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been a good week. It hasn't been as stressful per se. Both with work and with life. So yeah, I'm a little bit happier than usual.
Awesome, awesome. So I know there's a lot going on right now. I mean, especially like within the IT industry,
Yeah.
there's a lot of changes happening. I know a lot of IT companies are trying to reinvent themselves. Fortunately, we are in a good position to where we don't have to kind of scramble or make any drastic changes.
Yeah.
And we are pretty sturdy when it comes to recessions and slowdowns, just because we work with so many different industries, and we're kind of in all kinds of different industries. So if one industry is down, the other's up. Like like if oil is down, insurance might be up, or law might be up, or retail might be up. So there's always something. But one of the things that I'm doing is, of course, we made some changes. Like I committed to doing a video a day during this slowdown. Just that extra time. Make use of that extra time, and that's been working out pretty good. I mean, I
Yeah.
think like I know lately it has been a video a day. It's been like a video maybe every 2 days, but but the thing about video is the recording it is not that big of a problem. It's the uploading that takes the most time. I mean, I
Yeah.
record it and then the upload. So that's why I'm kind of reverting back to recording everything within Teams, even though the quality is not as good. But it's in one step I can get everything done, and then all I have to do is get it from the Teams portal. I mean the Microsoft Streams portal, and then upload it into YouTube so we can kind of broadcast it out. So there's still a little bit of upload download going on, but I'm just trying to eliminate some steps, and that's why a lot of people get burnout when they're doing video. Is they get burnout because of the editing part of it, and then
Yeah.
also the the back end stuff that you don't see. There's a lot of work that goes on with it, and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so we are here, and now I say, a video a day is actually more than one video a day for me, because I have a couple of other businesses, and I'm trying to do videos for those businesses as well, and it's just a lot of video. And then on top of that, we're trying to stay ahead of the changes in the industry, right? So we
Yeah.
are we're making some internal changes, we're taking some inefficiencies out, we're just looking at the business from all kinds of angles. We have a third party coming in, looking at different things, and trying to tell us where we can gain some more efficiencies and things like that. So there's always a lot going on, even though it's a slowdown. It's really not slow for us. So Mac, what do you have for me today? What are we going to talk about? What's interesting? What's going on today?
Well, we're going to talk about. It's funny you kind of alluded to that. How IT is changing or evolving in 2020. I have some very interesting figures I'm going to read off, and I want to definitely get your thoughts on that. Check these figures out. While 84% of IT leaders are responsible for providing stable online services, 61% of them lack confidence in their ability to do so. 80% of IT decision makers already feel that the infrastructure they manage gets more complex by the day. 74% of IT leaders say they employ intelligence systems like artificial intelligence and machine learning to provide insight into the performance of their IT infrastructure. And 70% of IT leaders are struggling to support the many needs of their remote workforces for greater security, network scale, and stability by resolving outages using remote access tools. It's basically everything that PCS excels at doing on a regular. But I want you to really talk about that, because that's some very interesting figures there as far as these IT managers really struggling with the changes that we're seeing.
Yeah. Now this is nothing new. This has been going on. But give me just a second. I'm going to close my door real quick. There's a little noise I hear. Just a
Sure.
little hum. I'm going to close my door real quick. So okay. So that should be better. Uh, so yes. Now a lot of these things have been going on in the back end. Some of these numbers might have changed a little, but the trends have been there before.
Mm,
And here's a problem with IT specifically. The problem is that companies out there that are doing um, IT, whether they're doing it internally or outsourcing it, IT has traditionally been a reactive service, right? So, something breaks, you get IT, they fix it. Um, there was a period when some IT companies wanted things to break, not only because they were making money when things broke,
mm,
but also because if things did not break, the customer never knew what was IT doing, right? So if everything keeps working, you don't know what IT is doing. Management doesn't know what IT is doing, right? And that was a thing, but now we're getting into and this has been going on for about a couple of years now, but it's gaining more steam. So now what IT companies specifically are getting into is being more proactive about stuff. So we understand that if things don't go wrong, uh, management may not see that IT is doing anything, even though there's a lot of stuff that we're doing.
yeah.
But we see this in the internal IT departments, right? Like the internal IT departments are always busy with stuff. It's like you don't know what stuff are they doing. They're either trying to somebody's machine, they're trying to patch it, they're trying to remove some malware, they're trying to clean up some ransomware, or they have to go to backups to restore some stuff because something happened, or just the day to day stuff. Um, there are even companies where they have IT departments, and these IT departments are having a tough time staying ahead of the curve. Basically, things like patch management. I mean, look at it this way: there's patches released from Microsoft where it can make machines unbootable,
Yeah.
Windows 10 machines. So let's say an IT person deploys a bunch of patches at, let's say, half of their company. Let's say maybe 50, 60 machines, and then all of a sudden half of those machines don't boot. What do you do then? Well, now all of a sudden it's an emergency because you have 25 machines that are not working. I mean, so so IT is kind of struggling to stay ahead of the support needs. Now there are systems and methodologies that are out there that a lot of IT companies are adopting, and you may have heard the term MSP, managed services provider. That term gets thrown around a lot. And everybody wants to be an MSP, but not everybody can be an MSP. Being a managed service provider means not only that you have the infrastructure in place to perform these services, but you have the infrastructure, the automation, somebody who is reviewing the industry standards and then making sure your automation conforms to the industry standards. And then pricing everything based on that model, right? And we've always had a plan, an all you can eat type plan where we charge on a per node basis,
Hmm.
and basically we provide unlimited support, whether it's phone, remote, or on site. So we provide unlimited support no matter what. And I've been asked a couple of times from other managers who have their own IT departments, and they're like, well, even our department doesn't do this. The IT department does not do this for all the different departments of in the company. So how can you provide unlimited support on a per node basis? How can, I mean, there's a lot of risk. And I understand his point of view. There is a lot of risk, but what we're doing is, because we have the infrastructure in place, we have our platform in place, we have our automation in place, we have our policies in place to make sure that we conform to industry standards. Because all of these different things are in place, that allows us to minimize our costs and the risk that used to be on the end users, the customer's shoulder. Now we can take that risk on us. So let me tell you what that means. So in a traditional way, in a traditional method, if you call IT support and they come out and they fix your machine, and let's say your machine has another problem 2 days later, well, you call them again and they come out and they fix it again. Well, every time they come out and fix it, they're charging you.
Yep.
Right? So they're charging you for that. So that risk is on you, the customer. What an MSP does is takes that risk on themselves. So basically, what that means is you're paying a fixed amount per month. Whether we come out to fix that machine one time or 10 times a month, your cost is not changing. It's that same cost. So the more trips we have to make, the more times we have to touch the machine, the more cost it is on us. So of course, it makes sense for us to have systems in place that do a lot of stuff automatically, where we don't encounter these types of issues that you see in a traditional setup. So for example, like, we have a pretty deep level of automation. I'll give you an example, like when it comes to servers, uh, even workstations. We monitor a lot of different thresholds, a lot of different, think of it, a lot of different sensors. So every machine out there has a lot of sensors in it. It's, temperature sensors, fans that adjust speed based on the temperatures. There's a control unit that's adjusting the speed of the fans. There might be a degraded fan in the system, which you may not even know about until it goes out. The drive capacity in the machine. So a lot of machines nowadays have SSD drives, so really you don't need to defrag them, but you do need to make sure that Windows itself has plenty of capacity to keep running as it should run. So what our system does is we keep track of all these different things, and then our system automatically takes corrective action when it detects certain things, right? So an easy example is C drive running low on disk space. So Windows is not happy when C drives run low on disk space. So we have automation where when we detect, this could be in the middle of the night because it's automated. So in the middle of the night, if let's say a machine was deploying patches and C drive is running low on disk space, we're going to notice that, and our system is going to go out and is going to start cleanup of that drive. So what we used to do, a while back, we used to manually have a person connect to the machine and manually clean it up. Now that part is automated. So we have an automated system that will go out, clean out that drive, and then it'll give us plenty of space, and that machine might be good for a while. If that same disk space issue occurs again, then we can escalate that to a human to take further action. So, for example, maybe disk cleanup is not gonna do it. Maybe we need just a bigger drive. So maybe hardware swap is required, or hardware upgrade is required. So we take into account all these different things. Now, a lot of these figures that we're talking about, 80% of decision makers feel that their infrastructure is getting more complex by the day. It is. It is getting more complex. It's not like it's not a feeling that they have. It is getting more complex, and that's why automation is critical. Uh, I mean, the more sensors you have in a machine, those sensors are useless if they're not being used to sense things. If there's a sensor out there and it's sensing something, but then there's nothing that's, taking action, that sensor is useless. It's a waste of money. And so the more information that's coming in from these systems that are deployed, you need some sort of automation to handle things on its own, and then not have a human be involved in everything that needs to happen. And that's how we are able to manage so many nodes with so few humans. I mean, and we are not where I would like to see us yet. I mean, we are very efficient, but we're not where I would like to see us. I think we can stand to gain about 15 to 20% more efficiency. If we can get to 15 to 20% more efficiency, I'll be happy. I'll say, okay, I've done good, and this is where we should be humming along. But I think we can squeeze about 15 to 20% more efficiency out of the system as we are. Now, a lot of the change that's happened recently, you talked about 70% of IT leaders that are struggling to support remote workforces. Well, that's something that was brought about by this pandemic, and the here's the issue. Some companies were kind of caught off guard, and some of them, our clients as well. We've been recommending them to enable remote access, but they didn't want to because they were like, oh no, we all work from the office. We don't want to work remotely. We never work remotely. We come into the office. Well, then the pandemic hit, and then everybody needed to work remote because some of the offices, they couldn't have enough people in the office because there's too many people, too close. So the companies that already had remote access enabled, they were great. It was business as usual to them, which, by the way, internally we all work remote as well, so it was no change for us. The big change came in where some companies decided to allow people to connect remotely using their personal devices. And that's where the problem started to happen, right? So these personal devices were not under the security umbrella of the company. So now all of a sudden if you have 10 remote users using their personal devices, now you have 10 backdoors into the system, into your network. And these systems have direct access to the network because that's what they need to work, right? So now all of a sudden it's a matter of, well, now we have all these little holes in our bucket. Why are we losing water? Because we have all these holes. Well, how do we fix these holes? So some companies were just not, they were kind of caught off guard, and they didn't think these things through. They kind of did a quick fix and patched it and allowed people to use their own machines and get going. So that brought with it its own set of problems. Now, what we've done in relatively recently is have the ability to secure the company machines even if a user is using their own device, right? So let's say a user is connecting from home. They have a PC at their house. They're connecting via VPN and they're logging into their office machine. Well, that's all good. The office VPN trusts this machine now because it's VPN'd in. The problem is, what if this guy is actually sitting at a Starbucks and he logs in and he goes to pick up his order of coffee, and somebody else gets in front of that machine, you know,
It can
or
happen.
they left the machine somewhere, uh, and now somebody has access to that machine, or they run to the restroom and somebody else has access to the machine, even if the machine is powered off or locked. You know, getting around the Windows password issue, the Windows login screen, is very easy if you have physical access to the machine. I mean, that's how we connect to some of the servers where people have lost their passwords, and we go in and we crack the password. It's easy. All we have to do is plug in a USB, and a few clicks, and we're in. And then we have full access to everything. We have basically domain admin access. So there needs to be a way to restrict access even for these users who are connecting via VPN.
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and that's why you've heard me talk about uh, second factor and multi-factor authentication. uh, these technologies have been there for years and years. They were just priced outside of the SMB space. They were like, a lot of the larger enterprises were implementing multi-factor authentication for their desktops and their PCs. I don't know if you recall those little RSA token keys people used to
Yeah.
walk around with, and it had a number generator in it.
Yep.
Every time you log in, you would have to put that number in there.
Yep.
Well, that's all good and dandy, but it costs a lot of money. That something like that costs a lot of money. So now, we are at a point where we can make it very affordable for small business to implement the same level of security. And it's required now. It wasn't required before the pandemic, but it is required now because a lot of these users are using their own devices, working remotely. You have no access to these devices, and you don't want access to these devices. I was talking to a business owner not too long ago, and he says, well, if we're going to allow somebody to connect remotely using their own device, then I'm gonna want total access to these devices. And I'm like, no, you don't. And he was like, what do you mean I don't? If they want to connect, I gotta have access. I'm like, look, here's the thing. Let's say you have total access to somebody's device. Let's say there's some data on that device that somehow got out into the public. Whose throat is that guy going to choke now?
That's
It's going to be
true.
yours. It's going to be the company's. It's going to be, it's going to be like, hey, my personal data was on there. It got leaked because company had access to it, right? That's where the finger's going to point. It's a problem waiting to happen. So what you want to do is not take over and take responsibility for the end user's personal device, but yet at the same time secure company intellectual property. And that's what some of these new technologies are doing. That's what we're bringing into the SMB space that was not available just a few months ago, just right before the pandemic started. It just
Yeah.
wasn't available. It was there, but it wasn't affordable for the SMB, right? So now, one of the and I don't know if you're looking at this document, but there's some interesting numbers here. But one of the things that I want to touch on a little bit is the cloud, right? So that's another thing that we are noticing. There's a lot of providers out there, just like there's a lot of providers who call themselves MSPs and managed services providers, and they put a server at a data center and say, oh, we can get you to the cloud, and it's all cloud enabled, and it's BS. A cloud does not mean a server sitting in a data center. The main thing about a cloud is the dynamic scalability of it. You have to be able to scale up and scale down dynamically, and that's what makes a cloud. That's what AWS and Azure and also Google brought to the table when they started talking about the cloud. Everybody can just stick a server in a data center somewhere and do that. We've been doing that for years. I mean, it was what, like 10 years ago we were doing that, right? But that doesn't make it a cloud. A cloud is the dynamic scalability, scaling up, so scaling vertically and horizontally, right? For example, let me give you an idea. So you have, let's say you have 10 users logging into a machine, and now that machine reaches 70% of CPU utilization. Well, there has to be something there that detects that 70% utilization of the CPU and then spins up another machine. So when the next user logs in, they don't log into that same machine and peg that CPU up to 100%. So now the new users, they connect to the new machine. Same thing. If the new machine gets up to 70%, we spin up another machine. And we can dictate how many machines we want to spin up, because there's a cost associated with these machines running per hour, right? So, and that's the beauty of the cloud. You pay for what you use. So we want to scale up these machines. We want to add more machines to the farm. But then as users start logging off and that CPU usage drops, we want to scale down as well. And that's the key. That's what a cloud system is supposed to give you, is that dynamic scalability up and down. So a machine sitting in a data center, and actually one customer or prospect we are working with right now, that's what they have. They were sold on this hosted server that they thought it was the cloud.
Funny, I was just thinking about that client when you were talking.
Right. So when we started doing our due diligence and started, of course, the first thing is the current provider is trying to set up all kinds of roadblocks to where they're not wanting us to see what's behind the scenes. That's just one thing. And the other thing is we found out that there is no cloud here. It's just one or two servers that are severely over provisioned. And that was the main thing. The main red flag was the slowdowns during certain times during the day, because the server is over provisioned. You have one physical box and you have multiple tenants in that box, and you just don't have enough resources. That's not cloud. That's just a hosted server sitting in a data center, right?
Yeah.
That server could be at your office, in your office data center. I mean, that doesn't make it the cloud. So we are seeing that the demand for cloud is higher because all these users now are connecting remotely, and there's a huge demand for bandwidth. And a lot of companies, especially in the SMB space, they cannot get that much bandwidth at their premises, at their locations. So it just makes sense for them to go to the cloud, where there is gobs and gobs of bandwidth available, redundant bandwidth, by the way. And that just makes sense. And then, if once you migrate to the cloud, things become a lot easier, right? So you can kind of split geographically. Like, you can have some people connecting to, let's say, South Central region, some people connecting to Eastern region. So even if something happens in South Central region, the people connecting on the Eastern region can still keep working.
Right.
So it doesn't, when something happens, it doesn't bring everybody down, the entire company down. You still have certain people working and be able to work like, nothing happened. And of course, all that is in the design of the cloud. So a person who was used to a traditional system design has a tough time understanding and designing something for the cloud, just because it's a different concept. A lot of the things are different. Now, of course, people watching this video out there are thinking, oh, he's just BSing us, right? So take the example of Netflix, when Netflix had that downtime because some AWS services were offline. So Netflix pointed the finger at AWS, and Amazon came back and said, no, it's not our fault. We manage this cloud. This is the nature of the cloud. You did not design your system to accommodate for the cloud. An outage in one region of the cloud should not bring your entire company down. That's a design flaw. That is not a flaw in the cloud or anywhere else. It's a design flaw. And of course, the design flaw was they did not accommodate for certain areas of the cloud being down or certain geographic regions being offline. That's the inherent nature of the cloud. And you got to accommodate for those kind of things to minimize downtime, so that even if one region is offline, your services keep running and they're not impacted,
Right.
right? So there's there's another thing that people talk about, the hybrid cloud. So don't worry about the hybrid too much. I don't see a lot of hybrid deployments in the SMB space. I see them in the large enterprise space, but I don't see a lot of that in the SMB space. A lot of the migrations that we do there, if a company has on-premise workloads, we are shifting and moving them up to the cloud. So it's a lift and move. There is no hybrid setup there. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of SMBs want to move to the cloud. They don't want to manage that hardware, the fire suppression systems, the battery backups, the generators. They don't want to maintain or manage or mess with any of that. They just want to pay for a piece of compute. That's all they want to do. Just like they pay for electricity, they want a piece. They want to pay for compute power. That's all they want to do.
That's it.
It's like you turn that switch on, your light comes on. Well, that's what they want. When they need that processing power, they want it to be available, and they don't want to pay for it when they're not using it. If you deploy a system on premise, you're paying for that system whether you use it or not. When you're using it in the cloud, you're only paying for what you're using. So there are some efficiencies there. and a lot of times when people calculate costs and stuff and they forget these efficiencies, but these efficiencies are there. And that's why the cloud is here to stay. It's not going to go away. It's only more and more companies are going to move into the cloud. There's just no way around that. And look at some of these numbers as far as cloud migrations go. How over the next 5 years it's supposed to just skyrocket. So automation, that's another thing that we kind of touched on it a little bit. But automation is big, and a lot of the cloud providers already have a lot of automation systems in place. Automation, for example, if a hard drive on their back end is dying or about to die, the system automatically accommodates for it. They don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about that. Actually, the customer never even knows that there was a hard drive failure or whatever. The user doesn't need to know. The user is paying for compute, they're getting that compute. If they're paying for storage, they're getting that storage. It doesn't matter if there's 5 drives on the back end or 100 drives on the back end. They're just paying for that storage. If 5 drives out of that 100 die, they don't want to be bothered with it. And that's the beauty of the cloud, is they're not bothered with it.
Yeah.
So, a lot of it is automation. Now, where are we going with this automation? Internally, we're not there yet. I would like to get to a point, probably over the next few years, where we can use some AI to predict loads so we can accommodate before we see these loads. So right now we have a lot of automation in place, but this automation only happens when we see certain things, when we reach certain thresholds. With AI, if we can predict these things, these valleys and peaks, then we can better accommodate for them.
Right.
So we're going to get there eventually. It's the technology is kind of sort of there, being prototyped. So eventually we will get there to where we can kind of predict, for so and so industry and so business. In so and so months, we should anticipate higher, CPU requirements or memory requirements or whatever it is. So I think we can get there fairly easily.
Yeah.
So automation is going to be big. Throw some AI in with that automation, it makes it even bigger. And I think that's where we're going, and we're going to get there. So. Yeah. That's what we're doing. And like I said, it's not just about all this technology on the back end for MSPs, all this infrastructure in place. No, it's also the pricing. So we are in the process, and I don't know if I should say this. I guess I'm going to say it. People can take it how they want to take it. I want to get us to a point where all of our customers are on a fixed cost per node based
Yeah.
model,
Yeah.
right? Um, so when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, what are you selling or what do you have?" I'll tell him, "I have this one thing, and it's
That's
going to
it.
solve all your problems."
Yep.
They will know the price. They will know how to calculate their total monthly cost. They will know everything. I just have to give them one thing, and it will be easy for them to understand. It will be stable, reliable. They don't have to worry about it anymore. And they don't even have to worry about the costs going up and down, right? So, and that's what I want to do is I want to get to a point where we can go out and do that one thing. And I think we're almost there. I just need to put some finishing touches. Now we've had the fixed cost IT outsourcing plan for a long time, but we have not been pushing it like we should. I think we and one of the things that I kind of, and it's probably my fault, is I had this preconceived notion that there are some companies out there who don't want fixed cost outsourcing. And then more recently, I'm finding out that most of the companies who don't have fixed cost outsourcing are not as happy as the companies that have fixed cost outsourcing.
Yeah.
So, and it's always like, well, no, we're having downtime, or we're having this, or why do we have to do this? And it's like, oh, why do I have to spend money on this now? We already spent money on this totally unrelated thing. Why do we have to spend money on this? So and that's the thing is, we with the fixed cost plan, it is all included and it's the best experience for the customer.
Yep.
I guess in a way you can say we're going from maybe selling uh selling individual components of a car to selling the entire car.
Yeah.
So you can come to us and get a wheel, a small wheel and a big wheel, and you put the big wheel in the front and the small wheel in the back, and then you say, hey, my car runs like crap. And we're like, well, you bought these wheels, I don't know, I'm just giving you the wheel, I'm not doing it. So I think with the fixed cost outsourcing, when we are giving you the car, that whole car is designed to work well together.
Yep. Yep.
And that entire stack will work well together. And I think at the end of the day, the customer will be happier. And that's what we're seeing is customer on fixed cost on fixed cost outsourcing are happier than customers who are using us individual, using individual services. So that's where we're going to get to.
Yeah.
So I've rambled along for a while, and I always do this, but anyway, so that's where we are headed. IT as a whole is headed towards more automation,
Yeah.
more MSP models, and I'm not talking about just calling yourself an MSP, but actually moving into that model and implementing some of those practices. And we're investing a lot of money into streamlining some of our process. Even though we've been doing this for a long time, we still from time to time have some baggage. We have some baggage that we need to get rid of, and it's always hard to get rid of. You over time you end up putting a lot of stuff in this storage. And when you go through it, you always need all of that, even though you haven't touched it for years, right? So I'm going through this storage and I'm going to throw away a lot of this stuff. I think it'll make sense. I think at the end of the day, it'll be happier customers, and that's what the bottom line is. We want to have customers that are happy. They understand what they're getting when they come and sign up with us. Right.
And I also think it's not even it's definitely the happy customers, but I don't. This may sound mean, but it's also getting customers that are willing to be educated on what you're doing and not fight, if you will, only to find out on the back end, well, damn, I probably should have listened to Nadeem. Now, these headaches that you put on yourself become less and less because you're understanding we're giving you a product, we're giving you what you need, we're giving you that information. And so it's something I think you kind of said a while back, when you were talking about this, that it seemed like the people that don't adopt this are the ones that have the most trouble, and you end up having to play Superman on the back end because they didn't listen to you in the first place.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of that. Specifically, this pandemic has taught us a lot of things, and that is, you know, there is a small segment of customers that are very demanding,
Yeah.
but yet they are the smallest of the smallest customers. and and from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to, for me. Sorry, my machine is kind of running low on power. Let me plug it in real quick before I run out. I should have done this before, but oh well. That's life.
That's life.
So a lot of these customers, they don't listen, but then when something goes wrong, they want it fixed yesterday. And what I'm noticing is that when we are caught off guard and have to do something special, like do a truck roll or stop our regular process and go out of our way because we have to fix something because the customer didn't listen to us in the first place. Well, that's a cost to us and a cost to the customer. And then it's that same customer, when it comes time to pay that invoice, they have a problem with it. So I'm noticing a trend, and that's what I want to change. Is I want to buck that trend, which is, maybe, those customers who are not listening to us, maybe we're just not a good fit.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe, either we've outgrown them or they've outgrown us, or something's happened where we're not a good fit. They never listen to us. And we have a few customers like that. They never take our recommendation. But then when something doesn't work out right, they need help yesterday. And they're like, oh, I'll do anything, just help me out here. And then a month later, when it comes time to pay the invoice, they have a problem with it. And it's like, well, come on, and
Oh, man.
the customers who are on our fixed cost outsourcing, they never have this emergency request, or very rarely do they have that. And then on top of that, they never have a problem paying because it's all automated, and they'd rather it be automatic as opposed to them manually mailing us a check. And everything just runs so smoothly because we have all these automation pieces in place.
Yes.
Now, the question in some of people listening, in their mind is, well, why can't you put that automation in place for the customers who are these needy, smaller customers? Well, it's not cost effective for us to do that. Right. That's the bottom line. I mean, I wish I could implement the automation for everybody out there, but I can't. I don't have the resources to do that. So we have to pick and choose the customers of a certain size to do this fully outsourced option for. And as opposed to, like, now I know a lot of companies, they'll say, okay, well, if you're so many users or less, we don't want to work with you.
Yep.
We don't. So I don't do that. What I'm doing is I'm saying, this is our cost. This is our minimum cost. Like, if you need fixed cost outsourcing, this is the minimum cost to enter that, because a lot of work goes into the automation pieces.
Yes.
There's a lot of third-party fees that we have to pay for some of these systems. I mean, I wish we had invented everything ourselves, but we didn't, right? So, so we pay, third parties for a lot of the infrastructure and automation and things that we do. That's just not feasible if you're below a certain threshold, and that's
Yeah.
why there's this threshold. Um, and what I want to do is, like if a customer doesn't have a lot of users, but they say, "Oh, Nadeem, I want to do your fixed cost outsourcing anyway." I'm like, "Okay, this is the minimum cost. If you can afford it, great. It will make your life easier and your infrastructure better and make you happier.
Yeah.
It will do that, even if you're paying for a few extra nodes that you don't have on your network. But that's a cost of automation, and that's why we draw that line there, because it's a cost to us. I mean, and it's it's just simple numbers. It's nothing complicated. But a lot of that automation we cannot put in place if we're below a certain threshold. But once we reach that threshold or go beyond it, that automation really allows us to scale from, let's say 30 users to 100 users very easily, because a lot of the automation components are in place.
Yeah.
And nobody has to manually tweak this or tweak that, or make these manual adjustments anymore. And now one of the things that I do is, for customers who are on fixed cost outsourcing, is that we then focus more on their technology goals, their industry goals, their business goals, as opposed to raw technology for technology's sake.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, we try to understand where the company is going in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and then make sure that we can budget for IT. We can give management a budget. Okay, to get to this level, this is the budget. This is what we need. And kind of, so basically we become the CIO of that company. So you don't need a CIO in house. We become the CIO, and we manage the budget and all of that. Now, we're not determining the company direction. We're still getting those cues from upper management. But what we're doing is giving the IT the direction and the scale that the company needs to grow, to get to where they're going. So to make the upper management's vision a reality, that's the information we need from them. So there's a lot more meetings that we have, a lot more discussion. It's a lot more back and forth, and adjusting the budgets, the processes, keeping an eye on the industry demands and things like that. So there's a lot more goes on. Basically, we're not just in the trenches shooting bullets. We are actually designing the strategy of that battle, and that makes you as a customer better prepared to compete in your industry. So that's where it is. But anyway, hey, it's been 50 minutes. That's too long.
That's too long.
It
Sorry.
seemed like it. It's too long. We need to cut these short.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But yeah, on a lighter note, I'm gonna be hopefully when I get home today, I'm gonna repack a couple of bearings on the wheels of my RV, and I have a plan. I did 2 wheels. I'm gonna do 2 tonight, and then I'm gonna do 2 more tomorrow, and I'll be done. Hopefully, I can get it all done.
It's a lot of work, my Lord.
Yeah. It's I mean, so it's the weather is just so weird. Like it would rain, you would think it would cool down, but it just gets more humid and
more muggy. My Lord.
Worse. And then if you're working outside, weather is one thing, sweating is one thing, and then all these mosquitoes. What's up with the mosquitoes?